Jim Atkinson here. In 1971, I interviewed Lansing radio employees about the release of the album, Jesus Christ Superstar. First, here's what Bob Sherman, owner and program director of WVIC, said.
I think one of the things that a lot of people who listen to radio or go to movies or watch television or read newspapers and magazines don't recognize is that whether it be the program director, the radio station, the producer director of the movie, the editor of a magazine, that frequently people who are in charge of disseminating certain items through media to people look for unusual, unique, and new types of things. I think that something the people who produced Superstar looked for was a shock factor, a surprise, something new, something different. And that happens to be one of the things that I look for in my job, in my obligation to pick, choose, select, and program records. It's interesting to note that the Superstar single by Murray Head and the Trinidad Singers was released before the entire rock opera itself was written. The people who wrote it, and the people at Decca Records that produced and released the first record, tested it out by releasing a single by Murray Head and the Trinidad Singers of the theme song from Superstar. And that came out in the summer of 1969. The album didn't come out till 6-8 months after that, perhaps 6 months. And it was not released as an album and might not have been released as an album had a lot of broadcast stations not picked it up. It's interestingly enough that we programmed that record for a couple of months in the spring, early summer of 1969. Then the album came out in the winter, and we went with it again. And around the country, there became more and more reaction. We went with the single again. The original reason, very frankly, that we programmed it was because we were looking for that type of record to get public reaction, to do something unique, something we didn't feel, and it proved to be so at that time that our competitive radio stations, our competition, did not do. They would not play it, and we did. And so that was originally why we went on it. As to what Superstar says or is trying to say, I think there'd be 1,001 different opinions if 1,001 different people listened to it. And I think when the show appears live, if there are 5,000 people there, they may come away with 5,000 thoughts or ideas. I'm not sure I know or am qualified to opinionate as to what the composers, the authors were trying to accomplish. If they were trying to accomplish using the opera method of integrating rock music into society, and especially young society, I think they accomplished that. If they were trying to bring Jesus Christ to people's attention, I think they accomplished that. If they were trying to produce something, an artwork, to turn into a profit, I think they accomplished that. The one thing I don't think they've accomplished is, at all, is reaching people who have fixed attitudes and firm ideas and opinions on the way Christ should be treated and handled. They've made a lot of people angry. They've made a lot of people glad, I suppose. I haven't seen it. I have listened to the album. Parts I like, parts I don't. So, as I say, you get a lot of different opinions. My basic opinion is that it's a contribution to music, to art, to religion. I think it's that kind of a thing, and I think that it's good. It hasn't opened the doors to much more. Nothing else like it is really out. There's another thing called Truth of Truths, I think, and various people have tried to emulate the Superstar approach, but so far they haven't succeeded. I don't know that they ever will. I suppose the best thing that you can say about Superstar is they have a good subject.
Now the perspective of Ken Rundle, who was Randy Martin on WVIC.
I think my first reaction to Superstar was the fact that it was the first time I'd ever heard the words Jesus Christ used on the air. And that was pretty shocking, but even more was the fact that it was a tremendously popular record, and it was one of the most requested hits we had back then. And but I really didn't get into it until I had to produce some spots for our presentation of Superstar at the Civic Center. And then I started listening to a few more cuts from the album. I still haven't sat down and listened to the whole thing, but I am looking forward to seeing it, the actual production of it, because I'm interested in it and like to get into it some more. I think the most unique thing about the record, the album and the single, is that it signaled a breakthrough in what radio stations can play on the air. For a long time, movies have been able to do pretty much whatever they want as long as they somehow satisfied the censor's opinion of what constituted social significance, as long as they justified it, you know. But radio stations have, for a long time, been bound not to say certain words on the air no matter what. And this is changing, and Superstar was one of the first, probably the first big one to change that attitude. And it's likely that it'll continue and spread to, you know, more records and more forms of entertainment.
Next, I talked with Dan Wardlow of WKAR's Audio Aftermath.
Well, you could probably talk about rock music in 1969, is when Jesus Christ Superstar came out, as being maybe on three planes. You've got the noisy rock, which was the coming of Grand Funk and the move of Deep Purple and groups like that to real noise. And then you've got the soft rock, which is James Taylor and people like that coming out. And then you've got the religious rock, which is George Harrison, My Sweet Lord, and Jesus Christ Superstar, which was a pretty good example of religious rock, or maybe even a thematic type rock. And as far as I can see, all three of these things were trends in rock music. And in my own thinking, a trend is not necessarily something that's going to stay around for a while, although it might. I think soft rock with James Taylor, or kind of country quiet rock, has stayed around quite a bit. I think it's going to be around for quite a while. But you get the other two trends, noisy rock, which is what I call it, and religious rock. And I think they're both kind of passé right now. Maybe not so much as far as record sales and popularity go for a group like Grand Funk. But I'm sure that's a passing phenomenon. It's going to leave. People will finally, see that there is very little musically to this group, and there's very little thematically. So there's little to appreciate. But you compare that to religious rock, and you take Jesus Christ Superstar, and it's a different experience in that it has a definite theme, and it's a theme that strikes home to a lot of people because it's religious. It talks about Christ, and at the time, it was, I suppose, a unique idea to do something with the life of, or the last few days of Christ's life, and put it to rock music, sort of a religious revival feeling. But I think the whole thing right now has become rather passé. I think it's kind of outmoded. Jesus Christ Superstar has been run into the ground. It's been analyzed and torn apart, and I don't really think there was that much there to do at the beginning. When I first heard it, I was, of course, interested by it. It grabbed my attention. You sit down and listen to it. You can analyze it from many standpoints. Technically, it's a very fine work. Composition-wise, it lacks in some areas. But I think the whole idea of religious rock is kind of going, because there isn't really that much substance to it that people find, I hate to use the word relevant because it's really a bad word, but that's what I mean. They don't feel very much from that type of music. It's pertinent to what they live every day. And I think it was a nice story, but I don't think it'll go anywhere. And as sort of an example of that, look at Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, which was written by Weber and Rice. Another work that, if you sit down and listen to it, and you know the story of Joseph in the coat and his brothers trying to kill him in the whole bit of the biblical story, it's very interesting, and they do a nice job of telling it in rock music, but it never went anywhere. And maybe that was due to lack of promotion or something like that. But the whole thing to me has become very commercialized and has lost a lot of its meaning. If you look at the Broadway stage play, which I've never seen but have read the stage play version and have seen pictures from the play, it's very commercial, and it lacks a lot of the intent and purpose that Jesus Christ Superstar did when it was released as an album. But they're making money on it, and you can't knock them for making money.
And finally, I inquired what Ken Roberts, WILS music director, thought of the Jesus Christ Superstar album.
And I started digging on some of these cuts. I heard the cuts long before I heard the album in its entirety. And I doubt if we would have played it up north, at least at that time. The town I worked in was a small, conservative-type town, and as people have mentioned before, and probably still have the feeling that it might be a little sacrilegious, just the whole idea of putting the final few days of Christ to music. I doubt if we would have played it up north, but I do know it was selling. It was selling good in the record stores, and it took a while for it to get off the ground. But the records, tapes, cartridges, and cassettes and stuff really sold good up north. I did not hear the entire album from first cut to last cut until I had returned to the Lansing area. And I sort of had mixed reactions at that time, following along the album with the songbook that came along with it, reading the lyrics as they were being sung and performed. You view it with whatever your personal beliefs and teachings have been. You look at your own religious background in connection with it, and I think the listening to the album and going along with it, actually sitting back and getting into the album, is a religious experience, and it can be a light one or a heavy one. It can be very beneficial or superficial. It's all it's a very personal experience, and the only way you can decide